Money must be phased out. It exploits and perpetuates the worst parts of human nature. It's tied the hands of technology, and it requires humans to be slaves in order for the system to operate. With our level of technology, none of this is necessary. Machines, coupled with free energy, can meet all of the needs of the entire population of the planet. Our microscopes have seen the atom. Our telescopes have seen the whole universe. Science is getting closer to the truth, while the people of the earth are getting further away. It's time to teach our children the truth. It's time to teach ourselves the truth, that we are one family. And we have been proven through DNA testing to be one family. And there is no longer any money game or border game that we will go to war over. We are one family who loves each other like a family does. And like a family, we will not fight each other now that we know we have another option.
With the advent of electron microscopes and our space telescopes, we're able to uncover almost the entire story of the universe.
To the naked eye, this is just a broken-toothed gear. It's made of conventional steel, composed mainly of iron and a small amount of carbon. This small quantity of carbon is enough to protect the gear from corrosion, but not enough to make it indestructible over time. To increase steel's resistance, other elements are added: nickel, manganese, chrome. This way, hundreds of different types of steel are made. As we move closer, this fracture allows us to discover the structure of the alloy. A rugged landscape materializes. Here and there, a scattering of white specks. They're tiny particles of dust that have settled on the surface. Each of these petal-shaped forms is a particle of steel called dendrite. An alloy of iron and carbon, dendrite is found in all solid matter that crystallizes in cooling. It's found in steel, aluminium, and even in snowflakes. When cooled rapidly, steel increases in strength, a process known as tempering. Between the particles, a cavity is outlined. We'll continue our journey through this hole, which is probably due to the aging of the metal. In the background, a grain of pearlite emerges from the shadows. It's easily recognized by its characteristic sliced structure. The thick black diagonal cutting through the pearlite contains a little more carbon than the lighter areas around it. So do the other thin lines. It's this extra carbon that gives the darker color. The fuzzy black and white flecks are faults in the structure brought into focus by the microscope. At maximum enlargement, a series of tiny regular spots appear. Here, at last, is the atomic structure of steel. Atoms of iron and carbon regularly stacked in all directions. Beyond this, nothing more is visible for the moment.
The Hubble Space Telescope gives us a good idea of just how much of this material is out there, and the total size of the universe. All of the matter in the universe was created when the universe was born, some 13.7 billion years ago. And since then, not a single atom has been created nor destroyed. They've all just been quietly combining and recombining in an endless cycle of creation. Every atom in every one of us was at some point part of a star. In fact, everything around us was once part of a star. Those stars forged all the heavier elements that would much later come together and create the molecules that form everything we see, even us. We see the same type of recycling here on Earth. The atoms that form the planet have been reused to create and sustain every organism that ever lived. Each one of the trillions upon trillions of atoms in us began their journey inside a star. Since then, they've made countless stops in mountains and rivers, in trees and blades of grass, and in molds and mushrooms. And when those atoms are done with us, they'll go on to recombine with something else. That's how it's been since the beginning, a continual process of creation and recreation. This is our neighborhood in the universe. Our neighborhood is part of a larger complex of neighborhoods that make up the observable universe. This is not an example of how small we are, but maybe a new definition of what home is. The atoms that make up your body are the same atoms that make up all of the matter in the entire universe, making you atomically related to the entire observable universe. We are not isolated from the universe here on Earth. We are a part of the universe with the ability to understand that we are part of the universe. You can split the entire contents of the universe into two categories: empty space-time and subatomic particles. The darkness of space has been shown to have physical properties, but all matter as we know it is made of atoms. Without going too far into quantum mechanics, you can think of the entire contents of the universe as this type of material: stars, gases, planets, and even you. By far, the most impressive observation out of all the matter is life. The atoms that your body is made of have been around long before you were born and they will continue being part of the universe long after you're gone. Let's enter the cell to witness this remarkable system at work. After entering the heart of the cell, we can see the tightly wound strands of DNA, storehouses for the instructions necessary to build every protein in an organism. In a process known as transcription, a molecular machine first unwinds a section of the DNA helix to expose the genetic instructions needed to assemble a specific protein molecule. Another machine then copies these instructions to form a molecule known as messenger RNA. When transcription is complete, the slender RNA strand carries the genetic information through the nuclear pore complex, the gatekeeper for traffic in and out of the cell nucleus. The messenger RNA strand is directed to a two-part molecular factory called a ribosome. After attaching itself securely, the process of translation begins. Inside the ribosome, a molecular assembly line builds a specifically sequenced chain of amino acids. These amino acids are transported from other parts of the cell and linked into chains often hundreds of units long. Their sequential arrangement determines the type of protein manufactured. When the chain is finished, it is moved from the ribosome to a barrel-shaped machine that helps fold it into the precise shape critical to its function. After the chain is folded into a protein, it is then released and shepherded by another molecular machine to the exact location where it is needed. DNA has two strands that run in opposite directions. This causes multiple difficulties, specifically when DNA is being copied. What I'm about to show you is an accurate representation of the actual DNA replication machine that's occurring right now inside your body. DNA is entering the production line from the left-hand side, and it hits this collection of biochemical machines that unzip the DNA strand and make an exact copy. The blue donut-shaped structure separates the DNA into its two strands. One strand can be copied directly, but things aren't so simple for the other strand, because it must be copied backwards. It is thrown out repeatedly in loops and copied one section at a time, creating two new DNA molecules. You have billions of this machine working away right now inside your body, copying your DNA with exquisite fidelity. It is an accurate representation that also shows the correct speed in which it takes place in the body. This is the way a living cell looks through a microscope, filmed under time-lapse. The part of the cell labeled purple are the chromosomes. When the cell is ready, it splits up two exact copies of DNA to either side of the cell, and then splits the cell down the middle. Let's isolate a chromosome and have a look at its structure. The wire-like structures coming out of the sides of the chromosomes are called microtubules. They are central in the movement of the chromosomes. Let's focus on the interface between the chromosomes and the microtubules. It's made up of thousands of proteins in total, and is involved in the growing and shrinking of the microtubules. It is also a chemical broadcasting system that tells the cell when everything is aligned for the separation of the chromosomes. When the correct position is reached, it sends out a stop signal carried by a molecular machine that walks away from the interface down the microtubules. Exploring at the frontier of science, at the frontier of human understanding, is mind-blowing. There's a documentary that can be found on the internet called The Genetic Odyssey of Man. It took multiple decades of work to make this documentary possible. Their work has shown all humans to be part of one family.
You and I, in fact everyone all over the world, we're all literally African under the skin. Brothers and sisters separated by a mere 2,000 generations. Old-fashioned concepts of race are not only socially divisive, but scientifically wrong. It's only when we've fully taken this on board that we can say with any conviction that the journey our ancestors launched all those years ago is complete.
We are all connected to each other biologically, to the earth chemically, and to the rest of the universe atomically. National pride, the use of money, conflicting historical beliefs and religions, and the herd mentality. These aren't good enough reasons to keep our family divided any longer. The view from inside your home does not allow you to see the atomic world or experience the grand depth of the universe. Even when you go outside, you can't grasp the vastness of space.
So when we were on the way home, largely my primary job had been completed, and we were coming home on a well-functioning spacecraft. We still had experiments to do, et cetera, but it was much more relaxed. And in addition to that, we were rotating every 2 minutes to keep a thermal balance on the spacecraft. It's called the barbecue mode, for example.
So it was like a barbecue
Barbecue
pit.
pit,
Okay.
right. But what that caused to happen was that the Earth, the Moon, the Sun, and the 360-degree panorama of the stars and the galaxies and the galactic clusters were there, visible in space. The stars and everything are 10 times brighter. There's an order of magnitude more visibility due to the lack of intervening atmosphere. So that sight is utterly overwhelming. And what happened was I was looking at that, and I realized from my science training that I was thinking about the molecules of my body and the molecules of my spacecraft, and my partners were manufactured in some ancient generation of stars.
Oh, think of that.
And wow, but wait a minute, that's what I had learned in college doing my doctoral work, but those were my molecules, and suddenly it became not intellectual but personal. It became a visceral experience, and accompanied by an ecstasy, a wow. It was a personal connection, and I didn't know what that meant.
Looking at pictures of space does not do it justice. If you were able to get off the planet and see the whole Earth from space, you would view the actions down on Earth between people as dominant and unnecessary. You can really see the rarity of life and the value of protecting it. If space travel ever does become public, It will be like taking the blinders off for the first time. And armed with the knowledge of the atomic world and the observable universe, you could see a vision of reality that's more appropriate to our place in the universe. And if you look down the earth, armed with the knowledge that the human race is a family, witnessing the earth from space firsthand would change the way you view your brothers and sisters down on the earth. People who spend too much time indoors have been known to become nearsighted, and for hundreds of years, people working on farms became farsighted. In a similar way, if a person spends very little or no time pondering or observing the atomic world and the observable universe, they will also suffer from a type of blindness. They are blind to reality. Now let's go back inside the house for a minute. You're certainly not going to stare at the walls, the ceiling, and the carpet for any amount of time. But there is one thing inside your home that you are going to spend a great deal of time looking at.